I
So
like
now
that background as well.
uh, last time we had talking about how the new Inspector General Police, Gurnam Randhawa, and I sort of hit it off, and we divided the army out of the town of Aizawl.
Right.
Now the town of Aizawl, quite spread out over a number of square miles. It's a small entity compared to the whole of Mizoram. So the army was looking after the whole of Mizoram. There's about 3.5 lakhs population, and I don't think more than about 30,000 people lived in Aizawl.
Okay.
But the idea here was, despite my general's objections and telling me off, I did feel that the army should be kept out of civilian areas as far as possible, like a town. Now, nevertheless, Gurdam Randhawa and I decided that we all have to find Mr. Lalaiya, who had murdered the previous IG. Because unless you catch the man who's the criminal, uh, the morale of the local people, and for that matter of the military and the police, and the confidence of the civilians in the authorities goes down if you don't capture the criminal. So, all right, though he's considered a hero amongst many people, but nevertheless, he put out his criminal investigation department, that's the CID, to check out details about Lalaiya, and I put out my intelligence and field security company, which had about 20 VISO agents. Told them that will give you a very good bonus if you can give us information leading to this. Now, while I had these chaps out in the town, we got information that there was a town commander, a self-styled major. His name was Kapchunga. He was the Viso underground responsible for all activities inside the town of Aizawl, which meant that the killing of the IG by Captain Lalaiya, or self-styled Captain Lalaiya, had been done under his aegis, under his planning, because that man has come from outside with a group to do the deed. But the planning in the underground for the town of Aizawl was done by Kapchunga. My intelligence picked up that Kapchunga has a girlfriend in the middle of the town. And now we know that the Mizos, they like girlfriends. And many times they get married to them. But the girlfriend and them, if they have had relations and they decide to get married, then the local Mizo church allows them to get married, not in the main church, but in the vestibule of the church. You know, the church is the main hall of the church, where the main altars are. The two vestibules on either side, rooms on either side. Yeah. So a vestibule wedding, where there are also photographs of the Lord Jesus and so on, is used for those who have already been in a relationship but still want to get married. Little differentiation to those who are innocent of previous carnal knowledge, shall I call it, and they can be married in the main church by the main padre. So Kapchunga was planning to get married to his girlfriend, and we knew that Mizos cannot avoid being with their girlfriends for more than a week. It's a weekly affair. Okay. So what I did was I had a set of Mizo and my helpers surround this building in a very quiet way, 2-3 people observing all the time, night and day for 24 hours. Sure enough, after about 4 or 5 days, we got information that the bird has come in. You could see the man has come inside and entered the house at about 12 o'clock at night. So the chippy was given, and about a couple of companies of infantry from the local battalion came up and surrounded the house. Then we made a raid, and sure enough, caught self-styled Major Kapchunga right from the arms of his dear girlfriend. Took him to the brigade headquarters with both the administration, for instance, Vinod Dugar, the SDM and others being chased after us that you've captured somebody and are you torturing him, are you not, he's coming every day. But nevertheless, we could beat the fellow, but we said we are interrogating him and he's our prisoner and we're going to interrogate him to get the information. Now, it's sequel to this. I was telling you how we found the weapons in the house of the personal assistant. The lady, her name was Van Lal Zari. So Van Lal Zari had been in her custody for also 4 days. Amongst her papers in the house, we had found a diary. Now, this diary was written up in Mizo language. You see, the Mizo language has a script in the normal Roman alphabet, Roman script. That's the one that you use for English.
Okay.
So the language is Mizo. You see? So what they do is that she put it down in code. For instance, supposing you want to write, in any letter you want to write the letter A. Instead of A, you put D or something, 3 or 4 letters ahead.
Okay.
This is a very simple system of code. You convert each letter about 4 letters ahead. And my captain in charge of the intelligence field security section, an infantry officer, command or guard and infantry officer, must give it to him. He had studied Mizo since he was in this job for a couple of years. He knew Mizo, and he understood that this was a Mizo language in the Roman alphabet. And he kept on fiddling around with it. And after about 3 days, he cracked the code and he wrote out the whole diary. Now, in this diary was written exactly the date and time how the plan had been made to kill the Inspector General. Are you hearing me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The internet is a bit unstable. That's I got to notice. Anyway, and also the relationship of this so-called Major Kaptunga and the rest of the group. So we confronted this information with Kaptunga and got more intelligence out of it. You see, when you know things, then it's very easy to get the person in your custody to come out with the truth, right? And we got to know a lot of details about where Lalia could be. And now my intelligence through that information came to know that there were a number of meetings in nearby villages by Lalia, because he was trying to do his next step, A, to protect himself, and B, to make another attack against some senior outsider. And we located that his meeting was going to take place in about 2 days. It's not IB information. It's my own and my own intelligence field security company information out of the diary and out of Kaptunga's self-styled Major Kaptunga's interrogation, that he was having a meeting in another day or two in a certain village, which is just outside the periphery of the Aizawl boundary which I had made between the local police and myself. So I consulted, I exchanged this information with Gurnam Randhawa, and I found that in this village, where it was on a ridgeland, south of Aizawl, about 10 or 15 kilometers away, and it had 3 or 4 tracks moving in various directions. So since the army was there, I took about a few battalions and I covered all the 3 or 4 tracks surrounded this village. Then we have a group which will attack the village itself to try and locate. We got a good intelligence as to which hut he would be in, but the village had only about 7 or 8 huts or 9 huts. So that wasn't the problem. We could search everyone. And we had to put, in case the man runs, they just dump down the khud and run. They eventually come to a pathway. Otherwise, you have to hack through the jungle. So you have to go through a pathway. So I knew these are 4 pathways out. So we covered 3 of those pathways. The 4th pathway was coming towards Aizawl across the boundary which I had given to the local police. So I had to explain to Gurnam Randhawa. I said, okay, this is the route to Aizawl from that village, and this is coming into your boundary. The bird is here, and I have got battalions surrounding it tonight, and we are going to make the attack. So if anybody comes down this road, you have to capture it. Or if he tries to run, to shoot him. So he laid the ambush on that track, and we laid the ambushes all around. As luck would have it, when we did the attack on the village at about 2 o'clock at night to capture everybody, the chef is a very strong underground leader, and they're very physically good. He jumped into the khud and he ran, and he took this path to Aizawl. And the police ambush was waiting at a spot where he had to cross a small rivulet, a small stream. And the ambush was there. And when he came there, he was shot dead. So he immediately informed me at about 2:30 at night that we've got a man. Now, during daytime, he has to be recognized. Who's the man you've got? Since there was curfew all over town between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., it was obvious that no innocent citizen would be hanging around there. Secondly, since ambushes had been laid all around this village, it was obvious that anybody who came on these tracks would be a hostile. Anyway, in the morning, I complimented Gurnam Randhava and his police, sent them a few cases of rum as my contribution to the celebration of the fact that I got this man. And I asked him, I said, what had really happened over there? He said, look, officially, we have said that we challenged him as he came, and because he tried to run, we shot him dead. Okay, that's the style. But he says, actually, we don't wait for that. We know it has to be a terrorist, we just shoot him the moment to see him. So the police does. Anyway, in the morning, we got hold of the various Mizo people who helped us to recognize the man, and yes, sure enough, he was Captain Lalaya. So that was the end of Captain Lalaya, and made the case for Mr. Surendra Nath, who was the IG police in charge of forensics in Calcutta, who was trying to piece this court case together to decide, take his fingerprints and all that, and connect them with the weapons that had been captured so that he had a case. In fact, we in the military did all the work for him, but he, being the forensics expert, got the credit for it. And as you know, our principle was that let the credit go to somebody else. You don't take any credit yourself, because that's how you get the cooperation from everyone. So Mr. Surendranath was greatly lauded by the Home Ministry. And when the Chief Secretary Ram Agarwal got posted out to some other place after his tenure, they made Mr. Surendranath, the ID police from Calcutta, made him into the Chief Secretary of Mizoram. That means he's a police officer who was inducted into the Union Territory cadre of the IS to take over as Chief Secretary. See, there's further accolades for him, because later, since the government thought much of him, they even made him governor of Punjab. And if you know your history, he happened to be flying to some place, he had an air crash, and he died there with his family. But the fact is, he did become governor of Punjab also. I came to know later his family in Jaipur, that's where he belonged. And sister in Jaipur, when I got posted there later, was married to the top police officer in Jaipur. So that's the connection of Mr. Surendranath and ourselves, and the case of Captain Dalai. Now, as far as Mr. Kaptunga is concerned, after interrogating him, we handed him over to the police, and he remained in custody thereafter of the Mizo government for his court case to put him behind bars. Now I want to go slightly back to the time of Lieutenant Governor Mukherjee, just before this incident that took place. You recollect, I told you he was shot in the leg while he was ambushed on his journey from northern Mizoram to Aizawl. And we felt that since somebody had shot the Lieutenant Governor, we must catch that man. So we had put our intelligence out, not only from ourselves, but also from the CRPF, who were in Koloset, near which this incident had occurred. A lot of patrolling was done at that time. And our intelligence came to know who that man was. So he was a sergeant or something, self-styled, but he was a very good, yet again, and a very good terrorist leader. And after much effort, we managed to capture him in an ambush by the CRPF. And he was brought in custody to us in Aizawl. And I handed this prisoner to one of my battalions for safekeeping while we were investigating him and making up the case as to how to proceed against him, since he had shot the bullet at the Lieutenant Governor. And near my headquarters, there was a high ridgeline, a village called Durtram, where I had Maratha Light Infantry Battalion. So we handed this prisoner to them for safeguard. And I explained to the commanding officer and the JCO adjutant, and the other staff officers of the CO, that this is a very important prisoner, since he had made an attack on the Lieutenant Governor. And while the investigation is going on to take the court case against him, they have to keep him in safe custody. We decided not to hand him to the police and told the police that we, on your behalf, will hold him in custody till this case goes through, because the police were not trusted to hold these terrorists because they are very efficient in trying to get away.
Mm.
So now what happened in the night, it rained like very heavily. And when it rains very heavily, the place where they placed this prisoner is just a bhasha made of bamboo, you see. So they had put cufflinks, the atkari, as they call it. And they had put not cufflinks, but the police saying where you tie up both the hands. Now these were brought from police in other states because Mizoram doesn't produce these things. And the people that normally have a lot of crime is Haryana and Punjab. So these Hathkaris, as you call them,
Mm.
were brought from there.
Ah.
Now the Haryana people and the Punjabis have got thick wrists and thick arms, whereas the Mizos have got very small
Ah.
hands and thin wrists. So they put this thing on this prisoner that we caught. When it was raining very heavily, he slipped his hands out of this. He opened a few tiles on top of the roof. And in the rain, he just jumped into the car and ran away. Now, why I'm bringing this story to you is to show you the boldness and the problems that we had to hold an underground person like this. But the boldness of the activity and the bravery of these people to get away when they want to escape. So he escaped. Anyway, we got a little angry with this battalion, and the army commander came to know. Naveen Rawley again. He says, punish this battalion.
Hmm.
And the battalion was ordered because Dutlang is on the main highway, which comes from the plains of Assam up to Aizawl. It's just outside Aizawl. And it's a very, very good posting to be there because you've got trucks and everything moving.
Okay.
So this battalion was moved to an air-maintained post because certain posts in North Mizoram, a place called Mamit, which was an air-maintained. Now, air-maintained post means that there is no means of supply to the battalion, food, victuals, ammunition, whatever it is. If you have to walk, it takes 3 days and 3 nights to walk from, say, Aizawl to Mamit, to the battalion headquarters. So the only other method is to take the supplies by helicopter and drop it on dropping zones near the battalion headquarters, and then it takes a lot of effort to pick it up from the cut side in the jungles and all that sort of thing because it doesn't drop in one place, it drops all over the place. See, so the battalion has a problem, and the whole battalion felt a little down in the mouth, and the CEO also felt very upset about this. And the Marathas are extremely good soldiers, they're very good fighters. But what I found is they're very sensitive. Something like the Japanese in some ways. If a man has made a mistake, he feels so upset with himself that he either resigns or does something. And this JCO adjutant sort of assured me personally that under no circumstances will we allow this man to escape. He felt so upset, he committed suicide.
Oh.
So that was a big setback to the battalion. And I also spoke to my senior officer to say that look, don't get too harsh. Things happen. And we'll catch the step again, which after a couple of weeks we did. And this time in an ambush, he was shot dead straight away. So we didn't want him to start escaping again. But now this battalion was in a morose attitude of mind. So I decided with the help of Ajit, my IB friend, to assist them by giving them good information in time so that they capture some weapons and things and, get some awards and so on. And sure enough, there was a man called Lieutenant Self-Styled Ileana. Now he's a young fellow, not more than 22 years old. We had checked out that he had a girlfriend in Aizawl. He used to visit her once in 7 days or 8 days. We laid a trap for him when he came. He was the head of the underground gang that was in the Mamit area, the northern Mizoram. So we captured him when he come to visit his girlfriend. And we brought him into our custody. And he was interrogated very carefully for 2, 3 days. And I find some of my officers are very harsh with the interrogation. I had said, of course, no torture, but they threatened the chair. And we'll do this to you, we'll do that, and we'll do this to your girlfriend if you don't tell us this and that. So I interrogated him myself. Of course, I pretended to be a captain, and rather than the brigadier, I used to put some powder on my hair on the side when I was a brigadier to keep my hair white so that it looked more distinguished. But I removed the powder, put a captain's rank, and went and interrogated the chap. And I said to him, some of our interrogators are very harsh. Have a cigarette. They like smoking, so I have a cigarette. Would you like a tot of rum or something? They like rum. So we had that. So we got a little friendly. So he told me, Captain, because he thought I was a captain, what do you want? I said, I want your weapons. He said, that's all. You only want my weapons. I said, yes, because as far as we are concerned, you guys get weapons from China and other places, and that is what makes you a threat to everybody. So if we take your weapons away from you, if we can, then that will reduce insurgency. We are not interested in killing you because we know you're fighting for your freedom and that basically you're good people, but we want to take your weapons away. He said, if that's all you want, why did you tell me earlier? What will you do if I tell you where my weapons are? I said, I'll get you released. Now, when we release a hostile after interrogation and hand him over to the police, the army can tell the police what they think of this hostile. For instance, we can grade him black. That means he's a horrible man. He must be dealt with by the law and never let out of prison. We can grade him gray to say that he's a bit like this, a bit like that. After a certain time, you may like to release him and bring him over. See? Third is to say he's white. White means that he's of no consequence, that he can be made to accept to come overground, from underground to overground, and be a loyal member of the society. And the government gives him a little plot of land and something, gives him a little money to make a little hut so that he can join the normal mainstream of life. So I told him, we'll make you white and get married to your girlfriend and have a good, happy life. Give us your weapons. He said, all right, show me a map. So we showed him the map. He says, this is the point. My weapons are dug here. So we had a PRC-25 set. It's a radio set. In connection with the commanding officer of this Maratha Light Infantry Battalion in Mamit, he said, here is it. He says, go to village so, go on that path and go to such big tree. Dig there and you'll find the weapons. So they searched around for a long time, for hours, and then they couldn't find it. Then we told this Eliana, look here, we don't know. She's given us the right information because we can't find the weapon. He said, the trouble with you army chaps, you've got no brains. You given all these directions and said you can't find it. So what we do is, you give me the radio, you tell your patrol to go so and so village and call the headman from there. And then I'll talk to the headman. He said, all right. So the patrol went to the village, called the headman. And the headman came. So then Aryana said, I want to talk to him. So we had to hand him over the radio set. With which he was speaking to the CEO. He said, hand the radio set on that side to my headman of the village. Then he spoke to the headman to indicate to him as to who he was. So he said, the three things. He said, do you recollect on so-and-so day that in such and such village, there's one of our Mizo girls so getting too friendly with the local soldier. And to punish her, we shaved off her head. So the headman said, yes, I remember. He said, do you know on such and such date, we laid an ambush in so-and-so place where an army patrol came, you killed 3 soldiers. And the captain said, yes, I know. Like that, he gave 2, 3 instances. Then he said, you know who I am speaking? He said, yes, you're Lieutenant Eliana, my boss. Right. It's a way of getting his identity shown to the person receiving the communication on the other end. Now, then he says, look, this patrol has agreed, I have agreed to give them our weapons.
Hmm.
Take them to that so-and-so tree where you and I buried the weapons and nothing. So the chap said, okay, those are his orders.
Hmm.
They're very obedient of orders in the underground. So he led the patrol through the jungle to a particular tree. He said, dig here, and we got about 13 weapons, including 2, 3 machine guns, light machine guns, and automatic G2 rifles, German make, and all that, which had been brought from China. So that credit was given to the battalion, and they got a compliment from the army commander, and they got an award or so also for capturing these weapons. And as a result, the morale went up again. Sort of things that used to happen over there. Now, regarding that man who had fired a bullet at Lalaya, I mean, at Lieutenant Governor Mukherjee, eventually the CRPF in his ambush managed to catch him.
Okay.
But before that happened, not to catch him, but to shoot him in an ambush. So the deed was done. But during this search, an incident occurred which I'll share with you. So what happens is here is a CRPF, that's a police patrol, going to the jungles. And they see a jungle hut. Now this jungle hut are built many times by local villagers when they are doing their fields. What they do is zooming. Have you heard of zooming?
No.
In those days, what they used to do is that each family had a plot of jungle.
Huh.
They used to build a hut and stay there for a few weeks.
Okay.
They used to burn the forest,
Okay.
cut the forest down and burn it.
Right. Right.
Big black smoke coming up.
Hmm.
And then when the first rainfall, because it rains very heavily over there, from about April till September and October, you see. When the first rain comes, then they throw the rice seeds
Hmm.
and you get a rice. It's called zooming. Now, once you burnt that patch of forest and got your rice crop after so many months, 3 or 4 months, after that, that place is no longer fit for zooming because there's no treatment. You burnt down the whole bamboo jungle. So then they move to the next patch of open jungle, burn that patch. So like that, they keep on doing with the result. Throughout the period of preparing for your rice fields, this in the late winter, whole sky and whole breathing in Mizoram is full of soot because the burning is taking place and the soot goes up in the sky and comes down. And you are breathing that with the result that everybody becomes darker. And also the eyes become dark. Even the tongue becomes dark because the water is like that. And if you put a water in a filter, there is no filtration plants as such. You take rainwater or whatever water you manage to get, and you put it in a filter with the candle inside. So when the water goes to the candle is absolutely black. So you have to wash it with every shade. That's the sort of life you have.
My God.
That's the zooming. Anyway, so there was a hut which somebody had constructed for zooming. And when this patrol came near the hut, machine gun fire started from there, and one CRP cap was badly injured, and the patrol had to stop the attack. But what they do is that they get the casualty out, and 1 or 2 men gave him first aid. The rest of the men surrounded this hut and kept it. They found a man inside. So they beat him up very badly. They thought he was a terrorist. But he turned out to be a forest guard. So they said, then if you're a forest guard, the terrorists had fired from here. Then from the rear window, as I explained to you, that the hut always has a rear window about 2 feet by 2 feet. After firing a machine gun and injuring that one man of the patrol, the fellow must have just jumped out from the back and into the hut and disappeared. The forester who was staying there to look after the forest, belonging to the forest department, he was beaten up very badly by these. So he was elected and sent off to the because the CRPF captured him, and then when they tried to recognize him, they were told he's an innocent man. So again, in the newspapers and all that, a lot of stories about the bad Indian army which has beaten up a poor forester for no rhyme or reason and not his fault, sort of thing. They don't realize that there was bullets coming from that place, and the patrol doesn't know who else is there. So after they capture the hut, anybody inside there is a suspect. Anyway, he came to hospital in Aizawl, and then one of the ministers in charge of protocol rang me up. He says, looks very bad. The army is going to get a very bad name. He's the innocent fellow. He's been beaten up very badly. He's in hospital. He's broken a few bones, and we are repairing him. Everybody is very upset, and the public is very upset, and getting very bad news reports. So I said, what's the answer to this? They said, well, if you come here and bring the head of that battalion here from Colosseum, it's about an hour and a half's run. And if you bring that guy who's actually beaten him and apologize to him, it may work. It's fine. And I checked up with a few people, what does an apology mean? Apology means that first you say sorry for what happened. And second, you give a good present in hard cash to allay the hurt of the patient. So the brigade commander went there, and the CO was called, he was there, and the man who led the patrol who beat him up, and that's I recognized him. We went to his bedside, and he saw all of us, with the minister standing there, and also the police representative standing there, and also the magistrate. So we said, the man who had beaten him said, look, I've come here to apologize and to allay your pain and hurt for what had happened. Would you like to, from us, accept our forgiveness with a little present? He said, all right, first tell me what the present is. We gave him about 5,000 or 6,000 rupees. Gave that. Then he said, well, since you've given me this present and you apologized so sincerely, I accept your apology and relieve you from the crime that you've committed. Magistrate noted that, there's no case. The case is closed. That's interesting in tribal thing. You don't go to a court, you don't go to judges and all that sort of thing. If you satisfy the aggrieved party, the matter is decided on the spot. And the priest is present and the magistrate is present to say record yes, and everybody signs, puts a thumbprint, the matter is over. He gets a good present and he goes away. So that is one of the methods of allaying the hurt of innocent civilians who sometimes do get into the crossfire, as one might say. Now, we wanted to, the army commander retired, Naveen Rawley, and in his place came Lieutenant General Jacob, JFR Jacob. I've told you about General Jacob before. He was an instructor in staff college when I was a student, and we had a lot of arguments. And then we became friends. And he knew me and I knew him. He's a bachelor and he's a Jew. To give you more about him, later in the 1970, earlier in the 1971 war, he was Chief of Staff of Eastern Command when the 71 war took place against East Pakistan. He was a man who met General Niazi of the Pakistan Army in Dhaka and bullshitted him till he agreed to surrender 93,000 troops. So General Jacob. He written a couple of books on the subject also. So he had now become the army commander. He said, look, I want to come and visit you. So I said, please come. So he came. At first, he wanted to meet all my commanding officers and hear from them as to what they're doing and what is their opinion of their success or failures. So I had all these 15, 16 commanding officers present in the brigade headquarters in a sand model, and they all explained the area of responsibility and they explained to General Jacob what they were doing. Then he got up and really gave them all a dressing down. He said, I'm not happy with you chaps, you don't do good work, you don't do this, you don't do that. He gave them a hell of a telling off. After it finished, I said, now that the matter is over, shall we go for lunch? And we went for lunch. And when we went for lunch, we had dated on the lunch and, some drinks were passed around. some beer and things like that. And when we were saying cheers to each other and cheers to the general, I said to everybody, I said, General Jacob is a very pure-hearted man. When he gives you a hell of a telling off, it means that he loves you very much. And number two is, if you think he's not saying something incorrectly, that you don't agree with, he said, then you have to stand up and say so, that he appreciates. Everybody started laughing. That was his quality. He wanted men to stand up and argue with him at least. All right. Anyway, he told me, he said, look, I'd like to meet the chief minister. The chief minister is a chap called Mr. Chauchunga. And it's an elected government, but like the Delhi government and all the problems, the lieutenant governor has the total power, really. The chief minister is there. It's a union territory. And he has his cabinet and they do their things. But if any major resolution is passed, it has to be approved by the government. Right? Because it's not a state, it's a union territory. So when we went to meet the chief minister, I explained to him everybody, and I took him there. And the moment we entered the chief minister's room, the whole cabinet was there because they knew the army commander was coming to see. They all got up and he addressed the chief minister and others as sir. So I took him to the side. I said, why are you addressing everybody as sir? He said, well, they've been elected representatives of the people and we in the military must give them full respect. And since they're elected representatives, say sir. I said, no, I don't call them sir. Chief minister is chief minister and the education minister is education minister. When you get to know him, then you call him by the first name. So I am calling them by the first name, and you, my army commander, is saying, sir, that puts me down a lot. It's not going to work. So I said, stop calling them sir. He said, no, I think that's the right thing to do. I said, but if you don't mind, saying sir to a senior person is a military show. I say sir to you because you're my senior officer. But these people are not knighted by the Queen of England that they are sir, somebody. You can't say sir to a civilian. I didn't like anyone. I said, even if there's a prime minister, you don't say sir to him, you say prime minister. So I said, I don't like that. So if, as long as you're in my command, army commander, sir, you please accept that I don't accept you saying sir to the civilians here. So he said, all right, take it easy. So that was it. Then he said, I want to visit one of your posts. So I took him to a post in a helicopter. This is about the 21st of December. And he was very complimentary of my zebra patrol and this, that, and the other. But nonetheless, he said, I want to see how your posts are done. So I took him to one of the outlying posts, which is not connected by. It took us about an hour in the helicopter to reach there, hour and 15 minutes. But I had sent a message to the post commander that when the helicopter lands at the helipad, the village is about 200-300 yards away from the helipad. And the post is also on this side of the helipad, another 100 yards away. So I said, before he goes to the post, get all the village boys and girls, because they are very interested in this. And we were helping some of these outlying posts by bringing corrugated iron sheets and things so that they could build their huts better. So they're very happy with us. To the post commander, who was the JCO, he sent the word that, look, the big shot army is coming. So why don't you all come along and meet him and sit on the hillside. So they were sitting on the hillside and this helicopter landed. I must tell you, Nivedita, that the Mizos are very fond of music, mostly church music. I've said that before. And some of them sing extremely well. Every boy has a guitar. And so what happens is that these girls and boys